Uh, yeah.
Hey, we are live. I'm here with Floyd FP. Floyd, how are you doing? Are you there? Are you there, Floyd?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yep.
Good, good. How are you doing?
Good.
Can you
Good.
scoot? Can you scoot to your left or turn your camera? Yeah, there you go. So you're more on the other side of the screen.
I'm
That would
gonna.
look good.
Yeah. I'm gonna. Let me separate the tab so I don't accidentally keep on closing it.
Sure, no problem. Do what you gotta do.
Let me make sure the probably a different link to the show. So let me update the link here.
I see.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Hopefully we'll get it going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody cares. Slice of life.
All right. Okay. Now I think we're good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see your Facebook peeps coming into the
Okay.
coming into the live chat.
Yeah, so I guess we should start from the beginning again.
Yeah.
I was born and raised outside of Philadelphia. I was raised a mainline Presbyterian, um, which is a kind of like a more liberal branch of the Presbyterian Church. There was a schism in a Presbyterian church, and they broke off basically into two factions: the PCUSA, which I was a member of, which is kind of the more Armenian liberal side, and the PCA, which is more conservative Calvinistic side. PCUSA is more affiliated with the Princeton Theological Seminary, where PCA is more affiliated with the Westminster Theological Seminary, which basically Westminster Theological Seminary broke off from Princeton, moved across the river, the Delaware River, into suburbs of Philadelphia. Um, uh,
Interesting.
but but yeah, I basically my mom took my brother and I to church, for Sunday school and so forth, Sunday mornings. It's something I don't know. I was kind of bored by it. I was kind of confused by it. We learned these stories. I think I was always skeptical of Christianity. I heard these stories, especially the Old Testament stories, like Noah's Ark and stuff like that. And these stories just kind of sound like fables, just like the other childhood stories I had. Um, and I don't think I was ever told that I should take these literally. That you should just try to learn lessons about God from them and so forth. And it was kind of just not that not to be taken like as history and so forth. Um, and I viewed it as odd. I said this is just cultural relativism to me. But then I was exposed to Christian fundamentalists saying, "Oh no, you need to take these stories literally." And our cultural relativism, which they were never, declare that they are, but our ways is absolute truth, and everyone else is wrong. And I I saw like the tribalism going on, especially with the kids my age. I had a couple of Jewish friends, and they were bullied and so forth for being Jewish. Then I was taught hell, and it seemed like, oh well, if you're not part of our tribe, you go to hell. So I said, well, what about like Japanese and Chinese? They're going to hell. It just didn't seem right to me, and I just became more and more skeptical of Christianity. Um, I started learning more and more, especially when I came across fundamentalists, because they were very sure and certain of themselves, and they brought up arguments, and I said, "Oh well, okay, these are arguments. I better look into it." So I kept on studying Christianity more and more and more. Took courses in college and so forth. I engaged in different Bible studies, and I've read a lot. I studied a lot, and 30 years later, here I am, and I now consider myself an atheist and a naturalist. I don't hold to naturalism dogmatically. I hold on it provisionally. I'm willing to change my mind. I just think it's the more parsimonious worldview at this time. And I just think a lot of the Christian claims are just false. And a lot of the claims in the Bible are false. And it's something that I don't think we can really should apply to our lives anymore. Particularly kind of like the things that are taught or condoned or even commanded in the Old Testament. I have a lot of problems with some of the actions of Yahweh in the Old Testament. New Testament's really not that better. You have Jesus, but he kind of teaches worship me and die as well. So I don't consider myself a Christian anymore. Although I continue to study Christianity. I love the Bible. I love church history. I love talking about the Bible. I love talking about theology and so forth. I still have interest in it. And a lot of the books I read nowadays are really from Christians, because that's the way you really learn. You don't learn by just staying in your tribal bubble and just read the books from your side, because it's just confirmation bias. You're just going to, if you do that, you're just going to straw man. When you talk to Christians or, someone from a different worldview, you're just going to end up straw manning them. The best way to learn from them is actually learn from them. Actually, read what they have to say, try to understand what, how they really think and so forth. And if you want to change their minds, if you really want to convince them, you have to understand them. You can't. You have to steel man their views and understand them, and then that's the only way you can really get through to them. And that advice goes for anyone. When you dialogue with someone who has differing ideas.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. What do you think of Rebekah? What do you think of her approach? She's got a soft approach, from what I can tell, a very soft and loving approach. But I've only interacted with her 4 times. I've enjoyed, obviously, I've enjoyed meeting her. I love her. I think she's a true Christian. But I don't know. I haven't watched a lot of her content, so I don't know, how does she deal with all these atheists? Because she told me she has a lot of atheists hanging around, and she's not quite sure why. But so, I mean, what do you make of her approach with apologetics? Or is she just a nice woman who's Christian, who's praying for you? Or does she try to argue with you at all? Like, from any angle, like Pascal's wager or anything? Like, what's happening? I will check out her channel eventually, but I just want to get your perspective on what is she doing? What is she doing with atheists in particular?
I like Rebekah a lot, and she's one of my favorite Christians, because she's able to have real dialogues with atheists, and she's a brave woman. She'll have a show and take on 5 atheists at the same time, and she's confident in her Christian beliefs because I think of her personal experience. I think her view is, whatever argument you throw at her, that's not going to trump her personal experience. So, but she's brave because of that, saying, you can have all the best logical arguments, you want, but it's not going to trump, what I've experienced in my life. So she's not scared to talk to atheists, and I recommend watching a lot of her shows. I think they're good. I think she does know the Bible. She does have her own theological points of view. I think a lot of conservative Christians would disagree with her in some parts, but I think there's many different factions of Christianity, so that's not new. I think she's an open theist, for example.
What does that mean?
Open theism is the view that God doesn't necessarily know what the future is going to be.
Oh, really?
So the future's open,
Wow.
so to speak. So,
Wow.
which is, I don't know if you can call that heretical, but
Yeah.
the view is God is omniscient, right?
Yeah.
He's all knowing, and that
Yeah.
includes the future. But open theism kind of is one way of dealing with the problem of evil, saying, God doesn't know the future, so forth. But I think there's problems with that. What does that say about Bible prophecy? How can God prophesize if he doesn't know what the future is going to be? So I think there's issues with open theism. But
For sure, yeah. But I mean, I put aside all the differences, because she and I differ on a lot of stuff, obviously. But it's not about a theological checklist, like, it's not a theological exam, right? The entrance to heaven. It's having it's having the heart and mind of a child, being innocent, being authentic, being sincere, and loving God, loving neighbor. And we're on a journey. You can't forget that we're all on a journey here below. It's a messy, messy, messy ordeal. You were exposed to some sorts of Christianity and you rejected things that were absurd to you. And if you do that sincerely, I don't see any problem. I just don't see a problem. So, Stephanie McGuire's in the chat along with my friend Joe. And I think you might know Stephanie from Bread of Life channel. But on Rebekah's had a couple of my guests on her show. I don't know who met them first, but Chris Date, he's an annihilationist. I interviewed him. Nathan Ormond, who is a Protestant Christian, when I interviewed him the first time, and then was agnostic the second time. I'd really love to have him back. And then Brenda, do you know Brenda?
Yeah. I've known Brenda for years.
Yeah.
I've been on Nathan's channel a couple
Okay.
times.
Oh, no way.
I know Nathan.
Ah, no way. Cool.
Brenda and I used to be on Google Plus Hangouts many years ago.
Ah, cool.
So yeah, I've known Brenda for quite a long time.
That's cool. I've had Brenda on 3 times or something like that, and I enjoy our chats. We obviously disagree about a lot of stuff, but that doesn't really matter. That's not the main issue for me. The main issue is, hey, here's a human being I would never meet in normal life, because I don't know if you know this, but I live up in Canada, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Did you know that?
Yeah. I can tell by your when you say about. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not going to meet all these Americans and Australians and the different people that I've met. So I just love that about the podcast. Excuse me. But so what about Catholicism in particular? Was your upbringing anti-Catholic, like the Horror of Babylon, that kind of stuff, or did you meet any nice devout Catholics that were good people? What's your sort of overall impression of the church, pedophilia, and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. No, like I said, my church was pretty liberal. They didn't attack other, Christian faiths. I did have Catholic friends, and kind of as a child, they seemed tribalistic as well. They say, "Oh, we're Catholics. We belong to the true church." So that was kind of off-putting to me as well. I remember one time I went to a blood drive. It was at a local. It was at our neighborhood Catholic church, and my Catholic friends, brought me there. I said, "Yeah, I'll give blood. I normally give blood. I don't care where I give it. I don't care what human gets my blood. It's just a matter of just giving blood." And I remember the lady there, asked me, like, what, I don't know what the term is, the Catholic term. How they divide with the churches? The
denominations?
I can't think of that word.
Oh, which parish you're from?
Yeah, what parish?
Or diocese? Which
diocese? That's the word, diocese. Yeah. I said, "Oh no, I'm not Catholic," and she looked at me like I was an alien or something. I said, what's the idea? But it does seem like, yeah, it seems like the Catholics, at least in my neighborhood, seem to be very cliquish. You know,
Yeah, well, not in my neighborhood. I don't know any. I don't have any Catholic friends. I got like all my friends are atheists. Because I was atheist my whole adult life, until I converted. But
yeah.
um
Well, I guess early, like I said, I was always kind of skeptical of Christianity. And one thing that I was skeptical of it, it seemed, at the time, it seemed to be very anti-science. I was kind of pro-science, and I had trouble with the Catholic Church with their persecution of Galileo. And so that kind of caused a schism, in me saying, oh, do I want to go this way, the religious way, or go this way, the science way? And so, oh no, I'm going to go with Galileo. And so I was kind of, and I kind of still view the church as, getting in the way of progress. Um, but yeah, the pedophile stuff, yeah, that's bad. I think, secular authorities need to take a look at the Catholic Church and take proper action. But the Protestants are having the same problems as well. I think there's, in the latest news, the Southern Baptists are having the same problems now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that the authority, the leaders of the Southern Baptist organizations were covering up sexual harassment and things like that in the church. So the devil's everywhere. It's just it's not just in the Catholic Church, but all this stuff tells me that these are human organizations. They're as fallible as any other human and so forth. And I on my YouTube channel, I give a 3-part series of why I'm not a Christian, and one of the sections I go over is what would convince me to be a Christian again, and one of the criteria would be is if Christians led a better and fruitful life than non-Christians. It's like I look at them and say, boy, Christians, they seem to have their act together. They're more peaceful, they're more happy, they're more loving, they're more successful at life, they live longer. What's their secret? They have something going on here. But no, I don't see that. Mormons live a very clean and wholesome lifestyle. I don't even think they drink.
So it seems on the surface. I've seen some documentaries about the Mormons, not so pretty.
Yeah, I mean,
Warren Jeffs. You've heard about Warren Jeffs, right?
No, I haven't. But but they have their past as well. But like they don't even drink soda. They don't drink caffeine, and so
Neither did the Jews of Jesus' day, but they were Jesus' biggest enemies, those religious hypocrites. I'm not saying that the the Mormons are all hypocrites. I'm just saying hypocrisy is everywhere in this fallen world. Like, that's for absolute sure.
Yeah. But it seems like the Mormons have a kind of a racist past,
They're nice people. I mean, they definitely come across as nice people, and for the most part, I think they're nice, sincere people and trustworthy and all that sort of thing. But we just watched a documentary about the sexual perversions of their so-called prophet Warren Jeffs, and I think he's still in jail. I'm not sure. But anyway, I don't want to denigrate any religion. I have respect for people of all worldviews, even Scientologists. I lived with a Scientologist at one point, and I respected her. She was nice. So whatever, people have crazy ideas and people believe all kinds of crazy stuff. And who am I to make fun of the religious beliefs of other worldviews as a Catholic, right? It's like we got some pretty wild beliefs with the Eucharist, the real presence in the Eucharist, and this sort of thing. But as fun as it would be to talk about Christianity, I have a policy where I don't talk about Christianity with atheists. I don't talk about the Bible, obviously, with atheists. I talk about God, and I don't talk about any faith-based beliefs whatsoever, zero, We only talk about philosophy, metaphysics, and how we can know with certainty, without recourse to faith, that there is one and only one uncaused first cause, the prime mover, the necessary being. That's the fruitful discussion. If you want to really dig into our differences, that's where we would have to start. We would not start with the pedophile priests. Okay, that's not the way to go. And we wouldn't talk about, the Immaculate Conception of Mary or anything else. We would talk about God, the God of classical theism, not the God even of Christianity with the Trinity. No, that's an article of faith. We cannot know, we can never know the Trinity. We can never understand the Trinity in a comprehensive intellectual manner, not even in all eternity in heaven. We will never comprehend that. So there's no point talking about faith-based stuff until you're a monotheist. So my apologetics approach is to get from atheism to Catholicism. There are basically 3 steps. You have to get first to monotheism. To do that, you need to look at metaphysics. From there, you need to become a Christian. You need to look at history, because Jesus is the Messiah, and the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims all talk about Jesus, the Messiah, in very different ways. And then once you establish that Christianity is the only true form of monotheism, you have to look at which form of Christianity is the truest form of, the one true form of Christianity, the fullness of Christianity. And for that, you need to examine the question of authority. And as much as I'd love to talk about authority and history with you, you're an atheist. So we have to talk, if you're interested in discussing our differences, we have to go back and we have to talk about metaphysics. And there are many, many ways of proving the existence of God. And there's absolutely zero philosophical basis for your worldview in terms of atheism or agnosticism or anything other than monotheism. It's like there's monotheism, and that's your only option. There's no plan B. There's no alternative, because every other option is philosophically untenable and full of contradictions. So I'm not saying this to be aggressive. I'm just saying, in all my years of apologetics work since my conversion, I've boiled it down to that. So it's just a more efficient way to proceed with the conversation, if that's the way you want to go. Or we could just chit chat about the cultural side of religion and this sort of thing. It's up to you.
Oh, no, I would like to talk about that. And what you just brought up now is where I want to talk about how you think other worldviews are internally inconsistent and problematic. So that was
to varying degrees.
Yeah, that was my reaction when as I watched you on Rebekah's show. And
so before we get into the metaphysics, maybe you could just sort of challenge me on some of the stuff that you balked at with when I talked to Rebekah when she interviewed me, because that's kind of light little topics where you could just shoot me a question, I could shoot it down, and then we can go talk about metaphysics after you've dealt with those. Because I did want to hear what some of your reactions were, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think eventually we'll end up in the metaphysics, but I guess I jotted down a list as I watched. I just took notes and so forth. And the first thing that caught my attention is you said, as an atheist and atheists in general, where atheists have to be their own final judge, where it's just one will against another will, as opposed to some absolute. You say an internal absolute, an eternal, objective, absolute, immutable standard of truth and goodness.
Yes.
And God can only have that. And my reaction to that is that everyone kind of has to. Everyone is a epistemic and moral agent, and because they're a agent, they have to make decisions. They have to make judgments. Therefore, I can't see how you can't be your final judge. If you wish to submit yourself to God, that is a judgment. You're the final judge of deciding to submit yourself to God. So I don't see how you can avoid not being.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I agree with you. But it's like a life-changing moment when you decide to submit to God as your authority. That's a life-changing moment, right? It's like it did happen to me. I was atheist for 25 years, and it did happen to me. I realized I'm not God, God is God. And then I submitted to God, and I made God my standard of truth and goodness and beauty and all the transcendentals, okay? So prior to that, I would just gather opinions of the experts and make my decision just based on me. I was the standard. But when I realized that I'm not God and that God is God, I said, hey, okay, Jesus, you take the wheel. Okay, I'm being silly here when I say that, but basically I place myself under your authority, God. And guess why I believe in the Trinity? It's not because the Trinity makes sense to me. It's because God said, I'm a Trinity. So it's like, okay, I don't get it, but you said it and I believe it, and that's the end of it. Boom. So this is what it's like to have faith. But and I appreciate the comment, and I do agree with you that I was the final authority when I said I relinquish control and I'm giving it to God. I submit to God. That is a private judgment that I made. And if we get into the metaphysical conversation, I hope to lead you to that very same decision. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and it will be the best thing that ever happened to you, and you'll thank me later. But I'm just being silly again, like I don't expect that to happen. But I'm just telling you from my experience that it was the best thing I've ever done, and I really sincerely wish it on everyone, especially the atheist.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a human, as a fellow human, I recognize that I have limits.
Yeah.
So I remember, you said as an atheist, you consult different experts and so forth, and then you make your own decision based on your input, different inputs you get, and consulting experts and stuff like that. And I said, well, yeah, I do that as well. And don't we all do that? This seems like we just have different authorities. You just adopted a different authority, which is the Catholic Church, where I haven't done that. But it sounds like you accepted Catholicism kind of as a package deal. It's like part of the package is Trinitarianism, so I'll just accept that because that's part of the package, and the Catholic authorities said, yeah, that's true, so I'm just going to accept that. But if you don't understand, if you kind of don't understand something's a mystery, can you really believe it? It's like, I think it just seems like kind of like a Pascal's wager sort of belief, where it's like, oh well, they're telling me I better believe this. Okay, so I'll declare that I believe it. What is it? I don't know, but if you ask me a Trinitarian, yeah, I'll just check it. Yes, I am. Whatever that is.
Well, there are reasons to believe. Like, this is the misconception of those who haven't explored the faith and don't have the faith. When you have the faith, it's faith seeking understanding. This is what St. Anselm said, and St. Augustine said the same thing in the 4th and 5th centuries. St. Anselm was in like the 11th, 12th century. But I just want to give a shout out. I got Stephanie McGuire. I got Rebecca in the live chat. I got Lena. Do you know Lena, Floyd? Lena is a young person. I think that Rebecca knows too. A lot of these people are from Rebecca's Bread of Life channel.
Lena, you had Lena on your show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched that show like 3 hours ago with Lena.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I liked Lena. I thought Lena was pretty intelligent, and I enjoyed that show.
Yeah. So it's fun. Thanks for sharing. I think you shared this on your Facebook, so getting some people in the live chat here. What were some of the other notes you took and some of the other objections that you had about stuff I said with Rebecca there?
Let me see. Well, you mentioned that atheists believe in everything.
I didn't say that. Chesterton said that.
Okay, but it kind of, and the way I understood that is,
it's a witticism. It's a witty thing to say. That's basically
that things are wide open and you can believe anything at that point.
As an atheist, I enjoyed not being committed to anything. I had loved that. I was just like, yeah, maybe this and maybe that, and also depends who you're hanging out with and who you're smoking weed with. But it's just in a certain sense of freedom or a license to believe whatever you want to believe, right? It's a lack of judgment because you don't have that standard. You don't have an objective standard. Today, I have God Almighty, I've got Christianity, and I've got the Catholic Church with the living magisterium. It's like, to those looking from the outside in, it probably looks like I'm in some sort of self-imposed prison where it's like, I can't believe this and I have to believe that, and thou shalt this and thou shalt not that. But the irony is it's the most free I've ever been because it's all about my love of truth. I am a philosopher in the strictest sense of the word. Not that I'm bright, not that I'm intelligent, not that I've read everything and understood everything, but I love the truth. I love wisdom. and God is truth, God is wisdom. And when you have that relationship, that personal relationship with God, not to say that I have an exemplary relationship with God. Okay, you can get used to me giving these caveats and these excuses and these disclaimers about myself, because I'm not going to try to say that I'm better than you or better than anyone else. But having the privilege of recognizing the truth that I'm dependent on God, and that the truth does not belong to me. I belong to the truth. That gives you a freedom. That gives you, there is a slavery. We do talk about the slavery. I'm a slave of Christ. I'm a slave of God. But that slavery is freedom. Why? Because God is freedom itself. God is truth itself. God is goodness itself. And so we're all slaves to something. We all have a master. Just choose your master. Which master is it going to be? Saint Ignatius of Loyola of the Jesuits famously said that there are two standards or two banners on two hills, one for Christ, one for Satan. Just choose. You can only choose one, and you have to choose one. So I choose Christ, and so I'm a slave of freedom. And the cruel slavery of the devil is self-evident. If you look around this fallen world, you can see that indulging in your lusts and your animal appetites is not the way to freedom. That's the way to a really, really crippling freedom. And luckily, God has blessed me with a very, very weak constitution, so I can't indulge in a lot of abusive things like drugs and alcohol. Like, I'm having a beer here tonight, just for the first time in probably in a month. And it's like I had 2 small beers, and that's about it. That's about as wild as I get. So I have this weak constitution, so I can't really abuse myself too much. But those who have a strong constitution, I've seen a lot of horror stories of people going down nasty paths with heroin, cocaine, illicit sex orgies, and these sorts of things. And it always ends the same way. It doesn't end with the white picket fence and the beautiful wife and kids. It doesn't. It ends with death, suicide, jail, or whatever. It's always ugly. It's always nasty.
So, self-destructive lifestyles, certainly will lead to destruction. I think when you say, atheists believe in everything, I think you're kind of protesting against postmodernism, where it's like, oh, well, you have your truth, I have my truth, You
reject that nonsense?
Yeah, I do. I believe there is an objective truth. I
Nice.
believe part of my metaphysics is I believe that there is a mind-independent reality. I like to talk about solipsism after this. I have some things to say about that. But there is truth out there, and
nice.
It's up to us to discover what that is. And we can only do that from our first-person perspective. That's a physical limitation of humans. We're fallible. We have limited means, but our senses and our reason are our tools in which we can accomplish that. And they're not infallible, but they're the only tools we have. If we have other tools, we can certainly use them. But I'm not, unless you can, show the reliability of sensus divinitatis. I just go on with what I think I have, which kind of leads me to your comment about naive realists. You're saying atheists are naive realists, and I'm not sure if you meant all atheists
most of the time.
or some.
Most.
And the way I interpret that is you're saying they're unaware of their metaphysical foundational beliefs, which guide them. And someone who's not trained in philosophy, I think that can be quite common. People are unaware of their metaphysical beliefs that shape their worldview, and I certainly recognize them. Everyone has metaphysical beliefs, whether they're aware or not. So, I think a lot of humans can fall into naive realism, and just not atheists.
Of course, yes, of course.
But I'm aware of my metaphysical assumptions. I consider them faith-based, but I consider them separate from other beliefs. I consider my metaphysics to be properly basic beliefs, and that's something that we don't learn. We just assume. It's just part of our human nature that we believe in these things. which kind of leads to solipsism. I mean, one of my metaphysical views is there is a mind independent reality. That I don't believe in idealism. If there's a window behind me with window shades, if I turn my back to it, I believe it's still there. Where an idealist will think it's not there.
Because you can see it in the camera. That's why.
Yeah, I guess I'm cheating, right? I'm cheating.
You're like one of those magicians, like
Yeah.
your tricks.
Yeah. It's like, well, don't show me. But that's a metaphysical belief I have, and along with many other beliefs. I believe other minds exist. I don't believe that you're a zombie. I believe you're a human agent. With a mind, with feelings, with consciousness, and so forth. Can I prove that? No, I can't. Just like the principle of causation is another properly basic belief I have, and there's many others, and most people aren't aware of that.
Well, I'm very impressed with your axiomatic beliefs, because it's like everything that I love. Objective truth, check. Principle of causality, check. This is like, if we could just educate people. I'm not suggesting that we go around forcing education on people, but if we could just have a basic metaphysical education on our children and adolescents and adults, that there is objective truth, there is objective morality, the principle of causality is universally valid, the principle of sufficient reason is universally valid. I'm not saying you subscribe to everything I just said, but just some basics. I think you're way, way, way ahead of most people already. And this is not to say they're two camps, like the cool kids like us over here, we're the cool kids, we got the metaphysics, and then all the losers over there. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we're all in the same boat, and we all just need the same thing, education. This is the Socratic method, right? It's like what Socrates said. It's learning is remembering. It's like, this is stuff that we all have access to, and if you have the luxury of taking the time and thinking about stuff, you can come to the same conclusions that the great minds of the Western tradition have come up with, right? It's not really rocket science. It's just, do we have the luxury to take the time to think about stuff? That's about it. And it seems like you've had the time to think about it, or you've made it a priority. Did you study philosophy formally at any point in your education?
I did take courses in college. I didn't major in philosophy. I was a science major, but as the years went on in my college experience, I felt the humanities to be much more enlightening and interesting than science. When I first went in as a freshman, it's like, oh, I just want to learn computers. I just want to learn science. I'm a geek. I just forget this other stuff. But after going through the different courses, I found history, philosophy, psychology, things like that to be much more enlightening. But unless you get like a PhD in those things, you can't really make a living at it. So, so I got my science degree instead. But it made me very interested, and I fell in love with it, and I continued to read, study philosophy. I've always been interested in the great debate and theology and so forth, and like I said before, I continue to study the Bible and church history and stuff like that, and I enjoy having conversations with Christians, because a lot of atheists aren't even aware of it. But I also debate a lot of Christians too. When if some evangelical says, "Oh, well, Jesus fulfilled the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel 9," well, okay, I have something to say about that, and I'll have a debate, or I'll post a YouTube video, on Daniel 9, where I go over that and I say, well, why I think that claim's wrong. So I enjoy that challenge. I find that I enjoy that challenge. Let me see. Okay, well, looks like we're agreeing a lot than I thought.
Because I'm an agreeable person. It's one of my It's one of my temperamental characteristics. I did the Jordan Peterson personality test, and I can't remember what it said, but I think I was agreeable. And
Okay.
he places a lot of emphasis on. I'm not a huge fan of JP, but he places a lot of emphasis on agreeableness.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of him either. I mean, his view of truth is pragmatic. What's true is what works. So he holds to a pragmatic.
I have infinitely more respect for your worldview than for his worldview. Let's just put it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a nihilist. The guy's a real nihilist, like an existential nihilist. Like he is just, he's just staring into the abyss. He doesn't have any metaphysics whatsoever. It's just like he's swimming in the darkness, and he seems to like it. Because I mean, it's not that hard when you're that desperate. Like I mean, when I was in my darkest philosophical outlook, I didn't enjoy it, and I looked for a way out, and I found a way out. Okay. So I don't know why he's slumming in the darkness. I just don't get it. But to each his own. I mean, I wish him well, but he seems like he's really slumming it.
Yeah. Well, he's making millions off of it. So
Okay.
So yeah. So
That's the more cynical approach. You're like taking the cynical approach. He's just worldly. 100% worldly. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that simple. Yeah.
One thing you said as atheist, I was curious about, or even confused. When you're an atheist, a Satanist, you said that you're a solipsist.
Yeah.
Now, were you a metaphysical solipsist, an epistemic solipsist?
Metaphysical solipsist, hard solipsist. I'm a disembodied mind, and that's all there is.
Yeah, how do you live that way? Do you actually view your family members and your friends to be this in your mind?
It was a short term. It was like my descent from nice guy agnosticism into hardcore antagonistic new atheism into atheistic Satanism and then hard solipsism was like an ever accelerating decline. Okay. And then once I was a hard solipsist, I don't know how many weeks or months, but it was definitely less than a season, like less than 4 months in that, because it was horrible. And so, like I said, I did not enjoy that. I wanted out, and I found a way out through René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Boom. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm also curious about. How does that establish that solipsism is false? I mean, I think, therefore I am.
Well,
a solipsist will think, okay, yeah, I'm a disembodied mind, I think.
Right.
So therefore, that establishes that you exist, but how does that establish that other things exist?
Well, it's an existential. Two things to bear in mind. Psychologically, I wanted out of my hard solipsism because it's not pleasant. It's very lonely, and it's very disturbing. Okay, very dark. So psychologically, I wanted out. So I'm motivated to escape. Okay. Second step, I read René Descartes, who talked in passing when he was building his new science from the ground up. He doubted everything with radical doubt. He doubted everything he could possibly doubt, and the only thing he could not doubt is his own existence, because to doubt it is to affirm it, therefore he exists. And so I mean, I was already there. So how did he help me? He helped me by just saying in an offhand way, but we know that hard solipsism is not the case, because we know that God is good. Of course God exists. Of course he's good. Of course there's no evil demon fooling us with our senses and these sorts of things. He just showed me that it's not about syllogism. It's not about proof. It's not about philosophy, metaphysics, or anything else. He just shocked me with a bucket of ice water and said, David, you're not God, God is God. And I just suddenly gave up. I said, Uncle, and that's it. It's like, yeah, I'm not God, God is God. And now, in my defense, because the atheist always says, well, it was just a subjective experience and you wanted out and blah, blah, blah. And I admit all of that. But subsequent to that, I was able to reason. And this is what René Descartes gave me, was basically this confrontation he intensified the confrontation with being per se. And when because I was life eternal, but to be confronted with it and to be given a way out. I took the way out, and then I was able to reason and to sort of understand using metaphysical principles that, the nature of being the I am. I think, therefore I am. Thinking about essence and existence, like, am I the source of my own existence? This is after I became a monotheist, but just thinking about, like, okay, well, I was a hard solipsist. Like, how do I know I wasn't, that it's not true? So I had to reason, I had to go back and I had to reason, I had to think about the distinction between essence and existence. What does it mean? How can I know that I'm not the source of my own existence, and these sorts of things? And I subsequently was able to have a firm metaphysical foundation for my rejection of hard solipsism. And I'm 100% convinced. And to this day, I believe that hard solipsism is a great gateway path into monotheism, but it's obviously a false worldview. It's like absolutely ridiculous. And it can be proven using syllogisms. I was able to come to that understanding afterwards. But in the moment, it was just being overwhelmed with the despair of the abyss of infinite being, and just taking the out that was offered to me by Descartes so nonchalantly.
Yeah, I still have trouble seeing how you connect the dots there. I mean, as a hard solipsist, you said that you thought you're God, but I don't see how that follows. I mean,
Well,
you could be the only mind.
No, I know that I am. But the thing that, when I talk to atheists about my experience with hard solipsism, what they always seem to miss is that I became aware of the fact that life is not temporary, life is eternal. And this is an existential experience that I had that's obviously hard to communicate. But I mean, I'm telling you what it is, what it's all about. Like, to hear the words I'm saying is one thing. To be there and to have an existential confrontation with life eternal, you'd think, oh, it's angels singing and it's pleasant and it's God and it's all these sorts of things. No, not when you're a hard solipsist. When you're a hard solipsist, it's like, I'm absolutely alone. There's infinite time behind me, infinite time ahead of me. There's no meaning. It's just blackness. And I'm just stuck with myself. And it's just, I'm in a game that I set up. Apparently I set this up because I'm the only mind. So I set this up somehow, but it's weird. So to escape from that is a great relief. But the thing that you can't deny is still that essence, that the core of the cogito, which is I am. I cannot deny that I am. And so I had the firsthand existential experience of bumping into eternal life. And although it was overwhelming and an abyss of blackness when I was a hard solipsist, when I submitted to God, it was the complete opposite, right? It's like, now it is angel singing, now it is heaven, now it is hope, now it is joy, now it is beauty, now it is creativity, now it is community, it is family, it is intimacy, it is union. It's all the transcendentals and more, and it's the source of everything that I value in this world. And with the leap of faith that I took, I had also, restored to me a new appreciation of the natural sciences, of philosophy, of religion in all its forms, and all these sorts of things. I had infused knowledge. I had mystical experiences. And I had all kinds of stuff. So these are, you're listening to me and you shrug your shoulders out. You're just saying to yourself, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. Was he on drugs? Whatever. But when you experience life eternal as a hard solipsist, and then you escape through a leap of faith into monotheism, and you have this infused knowledge, and you get the gift of faith, which is a supernatural gift. It's not natural, it's supernatural. When you get that, and you get a new appreciation for everything that you took for granted as a naive realist, which I was at some point early in my life. It's just amazing. And then it's like I said with St. Anselm and St. Augustine, it's faith seeking understanding. And I haven't stopped from that day forward. I haven't stopped reading, studying, learning about my faith, but also learning about first things and metaphysics and philosophy generally. So I could ramble on and on, but I'll let you just lead the conversation the way you want it to go.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I'll move on.
Yeah.
I think I still have a lot of issues with what you said. I still don't see how you connect the dots, but I think we'll move on. But it sounds like you had a subjective experience. You
Yeah.
had a life-changing experience. Um, I guess that kind of leads us to Augustine.
Yeah.
And I guess predestination and regeneration. Do you feel like you had a kind of like a regenerate? I'm more familiar with Calvinism, and I think Augustine was a forerunner of Calvinism. John Calvin, I don't
Inadvertently,
know,
but yeah.
wrote references Augustine a lot.
Yeah.
I forget the exact number,
A
but
lot of people do.
it's 100. It's like 100 in the hundreds. But I think, and there's a debate with scholars whether Augustine subscribed to double predestination or not. But regardless, do you feel like through God's grace that He regenerated you to accept the gospel?
Well, it's definitely grace. Everything, I believe, absolutely everything is grace. So yeah, everything is grace, right? So obviously, my conversion is the result of grace, and my acceptance of the Catholic faith is is grace. And what do I have that I've not received? Nothing, right? I just have sin, which is evil, which is nothing. So yeah, everything is grace. Now, do I believe that people are predestined to hell? Absolutely not. Why? Well, two reasons: common sense, and my Catholic religion teaches me that that's a heretical belief. So, it's like, would an all-good God predestine someone to hell? No, I don't think so. And my church teaches me definitively that God is good and He doesn't predestine anyone to hell. We have the sufficient grace to be saved, each and every one of us. And it's a messy, messy affair. But it seems like I had a big conversion event in 2009, and it seems like now I'm on a different track, which is looking better for my eternal salvation than beforehand. But I could still end up in hell, and you could still end up in heaven, period. And a lot of the saints seem to think that that's likely to happen because the burden of responsibility that I have is a lot greater, I would say maybe infinitely greater than the burden that you have, right? There is a certain bliss in ignorance, and there is a certain reduction of your culpability. If you don't know, you don't know. I know a lot more than you do about the Catholic requirements on me, the obligations that I have. You may have read them, but you didn't attribute them to yourself. You didn't say that these are true and I'm subject to these obligations. I do believe that I'm subject to these obligations. That's why I'm in a lot more danger than you are. A lot more danger.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure. Augustine didn't seem consistent. It's like around.
Have you read his retractions?
Well, around 412, it seems like he kind of changed his mind on free will, and he kind of went back to his Manichaeanism when he was debating Pelagians and so forth. But do you have the view that God just offers His grace to certain people, like the Calvinists, that there's certain people He will regenerate, and other people He will just pass over and leave them in their sin?
Yeah. I mean, the thing with God is He's all good, and He is maximizing everyone's chances to have the highest place possible in heaven. The only thing stopping God from putting everyone at the absolute maximal place in heaven is our freely made choices, which are irrational and go against, our God-given intellect. Because, if we were to live in accordance with reason, the dictates of reason, we would all be saints and we would never be going to war or raping our sisters and these sorts of things. It just wouldn't happen. We would be virtuous and rendering the adoration that is due to God. We would be rendering that to God, and so on and so forth, all down the line. We'd all end up, in the highest ranks of heaven. But that's because we have free will. We're able to abuse our free will, and some of us will end up at a lower place in heaven. Some of us will end up in purgatory before we even get to heaven, and some of us will end up, sadly, in hell for all eternity. So that's what my church teaches, and that's what reason teaches me. Because if you don't believe in an eternal hell, you have zero basis for any morality whatsoever. You can literally think, say, and do whatever you want, and you get the goodies at the end. You get the reward. You get to go to heaven. or you get to be annihilated. In the case, probably that's what you think. Everyone gets annihilated. Everyone gets the same outcome. So there's absolutely zero difference between the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for any two human beings throughout history. Zero difference in outcome. What does that mean? What does that mean for morality? It means there is no morality. You can literally do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, because there's absolutely no lasting consequence. In the traditional mainstream branches of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, there are consequences for the choices you make, and you got to be careful because you might end up in hell. So, I mean, you might, some people don't like the idea of hell, but I love it because I love morality. I love justice. I love truth. And if the truth, believe me, if the truth is that it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to end up with the same heaven or the same annihilation, my behavior is going to change. Right? And I've had this conversation with some Christians where they sort of kind of convinced me that, no, you'll be good for goodness sake because, you're connected with God and truth and you're going to do the right thing because your conscience is going to gnaw at you and all that sort of thing. And that is true, but it's only true because God is real and hell is real. It's only true because hell is real. If hell is not real, I mean, I'm going to be living quite a different lifestyle. I can promise you that. Because I love sinning. I love being selfish. And when I say love, I'm using it in air quotes because it's a false love. It's a false joy. It's just like we were talking about earlier with these people that indulge in their animal pleasures. It doesn't really end well, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't see why we need to believe in hell to be motivated to be moral. I mean, we talked about this earlier. These people live in self-destructive lifestyles, and I don't live that way because I see the outcome.
You're an Epicurean. Epicurean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm driven by eudaimonia. I want to flourish, and certain actions won't lead to my flourishing. And also have, as a social creature, I'm interested in the well-being of my family, of my close friends, and so forth. And but as a species that evolved, I also see the kind of more negative sides of our evolutionary history. Not only are we capable of being altruistic and caring for our loved ones and so forth, we're also can be tribalistic and xenophobia. And there's probably a evolutionary advantage, for that, where you need to protect the tribe and you need to work together as a tribe, and you have competing tribes and so forth. But now we're becoming kind of a more of a global community and so forth. So that tribalism really isn't really working out that well for us anymore, especially with technology and international travel, and our economy is now world based. And so forth. So, isolationism, nationalism, and so forth doesn't seem to work anymore. I mean, you can see the state of North Korea, for example. There are people starving to death, there, and just the war going on in Ukraine is causing economic problems all over the world. Now, we are a global community now, so. So I guess went off on a tangent there. So I don't think it's necessary that we have to believe in hell. I think if you just want to live a good, flourishing life now, and also if you care about your family's future, I have a child. I want her to flourish and live on after I'm gone. And you can say, well, after you're dead, it won't matter then, right? Well, it won't matter to me then because I'm dead, but it matters to me now. It matters to me right now what the future of my child is going to be. So I have to make a moral decision in how to act now on that basis. So I think that's enough. So I don't think we need to be motivated with the carrots and sticks of heaven and hell to be justified in our morality.
Just selfish losers like me need heaven and hell. But I'm saying that unironically. It's like that's just reality. Like some people are naturally good like you, and some people are selfish assholes like me. So I agree with you that you know, if you have this natural virtue, that's good. And, you know, but on the other hand, you know, you can't go to heaven just for natural virtue. That's the sad part. That's what my church teaches anyway, that you can't go to heaven just based on natural virtue. And Jesus says, like, look, the pagans love their friends and family too. Who cares? That's nothing. That's of no value. Not that it's of no value, but it's of no value for eternal life. If you want to have eternal life, you have to do more than the pagans. And guess what? You have to do more even than the scribes and the Pharisees. It's like the bar is high. The bar is really, really high. So for a selfish a-hole like me, I mean, it would be better just to be like you, a materialist, naturalist, or whatever you are, atheist, and just to not have that high bar of virtue and of how I have to live my walk with God and all these sorts of things. But I can't deny the truth. I'm not pretending that I believe in God. I'm not pretending that I'm Christian. I'm not pretending that I'm Catholic. I really actually do believe these things. And the bar is high and it's painful. It's not easy. I'm struggling, you know, every day, almost every moment of every day, confronted with my lower animal passions and my laziness and my greed and my lusts. It's not easy. So I'm not begging you for sympathy and poor me, poor me, poor me. But it's sort of an argument for, like, some atheists think that, you know, that we Christians are doing it as a lifestyle option or to fit in with the peers and all these sorts of things. No, who has time for that? Like, who has time to fake it? Like, if of all the things, of all the lifestyles to adopt in a fake way, who would pick Catholicism, you know? And I'm not saying this because I felt from you that you thought my walk with God was insincere, but I do get that a lot from people who think that I'm just trolling, I'm just being, you know, even my own wife, who's anti-Catholic, says that she thinks I'm just Catholic because it annoys people. It's like, there are better ways to annoy people. They're more, you know, it's a lot to take on to be a Catholic. Now, I'm not saying I don't enjoy it. I do enjoy it, but it's a lot. It's quite a commitment, and there's no certainty. I don't have the certainty that Rebekah has. Rebekah has the certainty that she's saved. Wouldn't that be amazing? Wow, to know that you're going to heaven, wouldn't that be amazing? But as Catholics, we don't have that. It's a dogma of the church that we cannot know without, you know, without a special grace from God, which is very rare, where God's going to assure you personally that you are saved. Don't worry, you're saved. But I don't have that assurance from God, so I'm not sure of my salvation, right?
Doesn't the Catholic Church have certain views on the noble savage?
Yeah, I'm sure it has certain views. Like we have, like I was talking about earlier, how ignorance is bliss. I mean, it really is. Like, I mean, but we have an obligation to seek the truth, to know that, you know, find that if you seek, you find, and if you find, then you're implicated, right? You have those moral obligations that are always increasing, never decreasing. Like your moral obligations only grow, they never shrink. So you have to love the truth. You have to seek the truth, and if you seek it, you'll find it. And then guess what? More, the bar gets raised. But yeah, the noble savage, I have a lot of hope for them, for their eternal salvation, more than I do for myself.
I guess alongside of what your views of Augustine are,
Love him.
You mentioned that Augustine was a biblical inerrantist. You said Augustine believing if there is one wrong thing about the Bible, then we can reject it all.
Yeah.
And the problems with the Bible, and you went on to say that for you the Bible itself is a mystical thing.
Yeah.
And that mystical Bible is inerrant, where kind of like the Bibles we have on earth are not. Is that your view?
Yeah. Every Bible you can purchase or own or touch or whatever or acquire has a non-zero level of error. Like it's a non-zero quantity of error, contradiction, or whatever, like flaws, whatever you want to call them. They're not the same thing as the actual Holy Scriptures, right?
So it sounds like
they're different different degrees of approximation to the one true Scripture.
So it sounds like for you, like the Bible is a platonic form
No,
where
it's a reality. It's a reality up in heaven, right? And if you're able to take a trip up to heaven to look at it and memorize it or whatever, come back and tell me about it, I would appreciate that. But most people don't have that privilege. Another thing St. Augustine said was, I would not believe in the Bible were it not for the authority of the Catholic Church. So that really is my whole point with the mystical Bible comment, is that we don't have the Bible. What do we have? We have a living magister, and we have a God-given authority and infallibility and indefectibility of the church here that tells us what the canon of Scripture is, what the interpretation of certain scriptures, not every scripture, but certain scriptures is. John 6 is a good example, right? The real presence in the Eucharist. And I would argue, that the church has given us the interpretation of Genesis, the first chapters of Genesis, to the point where a Catholic is not allowed to believe in theistic evolution. We have to believe in special creation, right? That's my argument. That's my understanding of the history of the church's doctrine on creation. That it's not an option to be a theistic evolutionist. It's happening the same way you have pro-choice Catholics. It's happening. Okay. There are Catholics in the pews and the pulpit, and even bishops and cardinals who believe in, for example, same-sex marriage, but it's established in the church doctrine that no, right? And there are Catholics in the pews, pulpit, and bishops and cardinals who, I would hope not that high, who believe that women could be ordained as priests. But when I read the tradition of the church and the teachings of the church, it's well established that the priesthood is only for males of a certain age. So, you can point to people that have their little heretical beliefs within the Catholic Church, and I would count any form of evolution as a heretical belief. But it doesn't mean that I'm not outnumbered. I'm definitely outnumbered on evolution in the Catholic Church, right? So it's a very imperfect and very messy affair here in this fallen world. But like I said, in purgatory, that's all being purified, and then in the church triumphant up in heaven, it's spotless. The spotless bride of Christ is there, and the mystical Bible is there, and everything is as it should be. That's why we pray, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because down here it ain't so good, but up there it's perfect. So
yeah. Well, again, it sounds like to you, the Bible, the mystical Bible, is a platonic form, perhaps in the mind of God, where we have a lot of particulars here on earth, and they're participating in Bibleness, so to speak.
Well, no, because the difference is Plato could never actually claim that there's a physical correspondence to any of the forms, but I have an actual autograph of all of the human co-authors of every part of Scripture. I have a historical fact that this man wrote these words, this man wrote these words, and taken all together, that's the Bible. That's the real Bible. We don't have access to it here below. That's why I call it mystical, because it's up in heaven. But it's a reality, and real men in history, natural history, in the supernatural history of salvation, they were the co-authors with God. God's the primary author, but there were real men writing things down, and those writings are to be found in heaven, right? So it's very different from the Platonic form. Very different. Although I love Plato, I love Socrates. They're my absolute favorite non-Catholic philosophers, for sure.
Are you suggesting like the original autographs of the Bible are up in heaven, or just kind of like the immaterial?
Either way, I mean,
words or verses,
this question reminds me of when people ask me, like, will my favorite pet dog be in heaven? I always say yes, it will be. Okay, little Bessie is going to be in heaven, and the subtext of that, like what I'm thinking in the back of my head when I say that with all confidence, is, or something much, much better. So if it's not Bessie, it'll be something even better than Bessie. It might be a simulation of Bessie. It might be some kind of Bessie 2.0. I don't know. But one thing I do know, God's dogs don't merit heaven. They don't merit hell. They don't merit purgatory. They don't merit anything. They don't have free will and reason like we do. So there's no reason God can't give you your pet dog in heaven. And there's no reason God can't have the physical parchments or whatever they were, vellums or whatever they were, that were the original autographs. I don't see any reason against that, but it's not really the essential salient point here. The essential salient point is the words, the meanings, what is this inerrant word of God, right? And that's going to be exciting to go through that. It might take all of eternity actually to unpack the scriptures. That's maybe what heaven is just like, okay, Genesis 1:1, let's start here. And let's go for all eternity, unpacking it all, layer after layer after layer after layer. I'm sure that sounds boring to some people, but one thing's for sure, heaven's not boring. So whatever it is, God's got an exciting eternity for each of us that makes it there.
Yeah, I wonder if the long ending of Mark is up in heaven. I don't know. And which one? Which version of the long ending?
We'll find out. That's the beautiful thing. Is like we're going to find out. Right? We might even go to heaven. Turns out Catholicism's false religion. I don't know. I'm a fallible man, like you said at the very beginning of this. I might be wrong. Maybe Catholicism's a false religion. One thing I do know for sure, God is real. God the Father. Okay. Maybe the Trinity is nonsense, right? But I know that God exists. I know God the Father exists. I know that much. So when I get to heaven, and heaven is just God, right? When I get to heaven, meaning when I go to God, if God willing, I make it by God's grace, if by God's grace I make it, then no harm, no foul, because God will know why I'm Catholic. And God will know, as I said earlier, that I'm not just pretending to be Catholic. How foolish would that be? How foolish would it be for you to pretend to be atheist when you really believe in Calvinism, right? If you believe in Calvinism, be a Calvinist. If you believe in atheism, be an atheist. Be sincere, be authentic. This is what I said to Rebekah on her channel. The problem is not which worldview you have. The problem is, are you examining it? Do you believe it? Are you taking it seriously? Are you diving deeply into it? That's what I said, and I stand by that.
Yeah. One thing, one of the things, one of my objections to Christianity on my series of Why I'm Not Christian was the kind of like the evolution and development of the concept of God throughout history. And I, one thing I want to say, especially with Roman Catholicism, is that I think theologians like Augustine, Anselm, and Aquinas kind of restructured God to a more Hellenistic concept of God. I believe what Blaise Pascal said, that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is not the God of the philosophers. That it's kind of a separate God from Anselm, Augustine, and Aquinas.
Yeah. And he wanted to bring the gritty realism back in for sure, but there was no disrespect meant, toward the great thinkers. He just wants to draw us, the reader, away from the intellectual masturbation back to the reality, the gritty reality of 2022 years ago. Well, it wasn't that long ago when he was around, but you get the idea. He really wanted us to be in that existential mode rather than an intellectual mode. So I applaud him for that, and I think he took the best of both worlds, but was emphasizing, prudently emphasizing one aspect over the other. But definitely, he was not an anti-intellectual. No way.
Yeah, I think what it does is it turns God into an abstract, and it removes kind of like the personhood of God. And I remember in your talk with Rebekah, you mentioned that there's certain stories and passages in the Bible that you've struggled with, and the one you mentioned was the one in Genesis 18 where you have Abraham bargaining with God over the future of Sodom, and he said, well, if there's 50 righteous people in heaven, will you save Sodom? And God says, okay, but then he goes down lower. What about 20? What about 10? And so forth, and this back and forth, and that sort of God is more of a Zeus type God, and I think that's the God that we find in the J source of creation in Genesis 2. He walks with Adam and Eve, and after they eat from the fruit, he says, "Where are you?" and so forth. And it's more of an anthropomorphic God.
Yeah.
And I think you better understand these stories if you don't try to interpret it as the God of Anselm and Aquinas, where it's the greatest conceivable being and
Well,
so
then you
forth.
end up being a Mormon or something where the God's just really, really, really good, but not infinite in every pure perfection. I mean, it's just, hey, if that's what melts your butter, if you're willing to worship a God who's imperfect, go for it. But I never would, never, never, count me out. I'm not going to
Yeah.
worship a God who's not infinite in every pure perfection. Period.
Yeah. Well, when I see the Bible history and kind of history of the Jews and Christians, I see this evolution of God where he's a very anthropomorphic Zeus-like God, who gets angry, who has regrets, who can be bargained with, and so forth. To the God of Thomas Aquinas, you seem very much to be Thomistic, where he's pure actuality. He's all output, and so forth, and he's not contingent on humans and so forth. And I kind of see that as kind of two separate Bibles, not two separate Bibles, but two separate gods. And I think if you try to view God that way, I think it's going to make understanding the Bible a lot harder. And as you experience with certain these stories, how you make sense of God bargaining with people, and Moses seeing God's back parts, and God enjoying the aroma of the sacrifice that Noah made, after the flood, and things like that.
Well, I have a different understanding now, because the incarnation ushered in a new sort of model for God, because God is fully human in the incarnation, and there's nothing that he lacks in his humanity in the God-man. Of course, there are two separate natures in Christ, the divine and the human. But did you ever hear Saint Augustine? Did you read The City of God by Saint Augustine by any chance?
I read it like 30 years ago.
Anyway, he says a lot of stuff. It's a fascinating read, but he rambles and he talks about all kinds of crazy stuff. And, you don't have to believe it all, but it's interesting. But one of the things he talks about is the Greek and Roman pantheons, these gods, and there's the god of fertility and this god of war and that god of whatever, And he says, fine, let God be Zeus. And he talks about the attributes of Zeus. And he says, let God be Thor. And he talks about the attributes of Thor. And let God be Venus. And he talks about the attributes of Venus. And he just goes on through all these all these gods, major and minor. And he just says, look, God has all of this and more, right? So what are you excited about as a pagan? Are you excited about Jove? Jove's the big one, right? Is Jove Zeus? Jove is Zeus, right? Jove is Zeus.
Jehovah, yeah.
No, Jove.
Oh, Jove, yeah. That Jove
That's Zeus.
is the Roman version of I believe of the Greek Zeus.
Yeah. So I think he's top dog. I think he's top dog, right? If I'm not mistaken, he's the top dog.
Well, he's kind of like Yahweh. He didn't start out that way, but
Henotheism.
He was promoted, because Jove had a father, right? I mean, Zeus had a father.
Yeah, same thing.
I'm googling it real quick. Yeah. Jove. I mean, there's Zeus, and Jupiter is the Roman counterpart of Zeus. But yeah, I thought Jove was another name.
I think it's the same, but I don't know. Anyway, my point is that Saint Augustine was very comfortable.
Oh yeah, Jupiter. Yeah. Jupiter, also known as Jove.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's the Roman counterpart of Zeus.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter the hierarchy. The Saint Augustine's point was that, look, don't get all tripped up on these deities, and there's one God, and it doesn't matter if some religions are confused about the attributes of the deity. We can know a lot of the attributes of God, of the one true God, and there's nothing foreign to God. There's nothing foreign to God. right? And the only thing foreign to God is sin and evil. He has no part in that. But I mean, it's kind of natural because evil has no substance whatsoever, right? Evil has no substance. So we really don't have anything to fear from, likewise, from those who do the theory about the myth theory, where it's like, well, there's similar stories to the flood in different cultures, and they have got the story of Gilgamesh and all these sorts of things, and this story came earlier and these sorts of things. Yeah, but we're not threatened by that either, because there's similar stories. It depends how you look at that, right? What are you going to conclude from that? You don't have to conclude this is an older story, it's similar, therefore the new story is made up nonsense. No, I always take the approach, if I'm going to compare Zeus to the god that I worship, or if I'm going to compare some myth to the story, a biblical story, I always just ask a very simple question. Is there any difference? Is there any difference? If the answer is no, then hey, that's my God, or hey, that's my Bible story. If there is a difference, I say, well, hey, you admit there's a difference, right? So if this candidate for being the one true God lacks some pure perfection, guess what? It's not God. And if it doesn't lack some perfection, if it doesn't differ from the one true God, then guess what? They're not two. They're one. It's God. So I've had many arguments with atheists where I end up saying, yeah, I do worship the flying spaghetti monster, according to you, because according to you, there's no difference between that and my God. It has all the pure perfections. It's immaterial, it's absolutely simple, and all these sorts of things. It's just a very simple thing to distinguish God from not God. And if you want to use the word Dieu, Allah, Deus, whatever, that's immaterial. Even the flying spaghetti monster or Zeus or Jupiter, it's completely immaterial. It's what do you mean? What are the perfections of this being, right? So I don't buy into all the hairy complications of the scriptures and the anthropomorphism. That's all been explained away, like in the early church, right? I don't know if you've read a lot of the early church fathers, but they deal, like Justin Martyr, and they deal with this stuff head on, and they're not afraid, and it's pretty easily dealt with.
You brought up divine simplicity. Does Roman Catholicism, do they subscribe to divine simplicity?
Dogmatic, yeah.
Okay. Because, that's Protestantism goes back and forth. Some do and some don't. But I didn't know the official Catholic stance on divine simplicity. I find that hard to believe in regards to the Trinity. How can three persons and one being be simple? It doesn't seem to.
You want me to explain it to you?
Yeah, if you could.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Yeah. If we go into evolution, I don't debate evolution. I'm not a scientist. I leave that up to the scientists to support evolution. Although I do believe in evolution. I believe in natural selection. I believe in common ancestry and things like that. But one thing I was curious about, you mentioned on Rebekah's show, you said you're a young Earth creationist, and you brought up the Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
So you actually said there's one and only one Immaculate Conception, and if Adam and Eve were conceived in the womb of any human animal, or non-human animal, then that dogma is false. And if the dogma is false, my religion is false. And if Catholicism is false, then Christianity is false. And I don't understand how the Immaculate Conception, which is the conception of Mary, conceived with free of original sin, how does that tie back to Adam and Eve? I don't see the connection there.
They fell. Adam and Eve fell. I mean, this is from a Christian perspective, so bear with me. But Adam and Eve existed. They were created perfect and free from sin, right? Immaculate, in other words. They were created free from sin, and then they fell. So they didn't fall and then get created, right? You can't fall before you exist. So step one, create Adam and Eve, whether it's through evolution or through special creation. Step 1, create them. Step 2, give them free will. Step 3, they abuse the free will and they fall from grace. Okay, so when they were created, whether through evolution, theistic evolution, or special creation, when they were created, they were innocent, they were free from sin, they were immaculate. And so if they were created in the womb of a beast or of a human, they would have been necessarily immaculately conceived, and therefore Christianity is false, period. So, I mean, there goes your Bible. So you're right back to where you started with natural, sort of generic monotheism, right? So that's not really an issue for me. That's why I have no fear or anxiety about discovering that Christianity is false. It's because, like, the farthest I can possibly fall is to generic monotheism, and that's the best place you could possibly be, right? It's the best place you could possibly be. Having Christianity and Catholicism is literally just icing on the cake. It's the cake, though. It's the cake. It's all about the cake. It's all about the monotheism. The Christianity and the Catholicism are wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's icing on the cake. If I get stripped of my Catholicism and therefore my Christianity, I'm not gonna lose any sleep, because I got God. I've got monotheism. So yeah, the whole thing with the Immaculate Conception is just like, that's on a hair trigger. Like, if any dogma gets contradicted, I'm out. Right? I'm ready to abandon Jesus Christ as legend, lunatic, liar, or some combination of those three.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you're saying Adam and Eve, if they were conceived in a womb and they were born, they would have not.
If they were conceived, they were conceived without sin, because they didn't sin. They didn't sin before they were conceived. Obviously, they only sinned after they were conceived. So when they were conceived, they were conceived without sin. They were conceived immaculately. And so if they were conceived immaculately, guess what? Mary is not the one and only Immaculate Conception. Period. Christianity is false. Boom. So if you can prove to me that Adam and Eve were conceived in the womb of any animal, human or non-human, I'm out of Christianity. But good luck with that project.
I'm still trying to understand this. So, I mean, before Adam and Eve,
there are two components to the Immaculate Conception: the immaculate part and the conception part. Which part don't you understand? Immaculate means without sin. Conception means zygote.
Right. So, okay. So let's say Adam and Eve were conceived in the womb.
Yeah.
All right. So, but why can't, you're saying since Mary's, there's only one Immaculate Conception, that was Mary's. So you're saying that if Adam and Eve were conceived in a womb, that they would have sin?
No, they would have no sin. Because like I said, you can't sin before you're conceived. You can only sin after you're conceived, right?
Right. So sin came in the world
after they were conceived. So they were immaculately conceived if they were conceived at all.
Right.
In the womb of any beast.
So and you're saying that's not possible?
It's not possible. It's not possible if Christianity is true, and Christianity is not possibly true if Adam and or Eve were conceived without sin in the belly of any animal.
Because you could say, before Adam and Eve, there are no soul infused creatures, and Adam and Eve were the first ones to have souls.
Yeah.
They were born sinless, and then after they fell, sin came into the world. Yeah. And every conception after that, except for Mary, original sin was passed down.
Yeah, but how did they come into the world? With sin or without sin? They came in without sin.
Without sin.
Yeah, so if they were conceived in the womb, they were conceived in the womb sinless, so they were immaculately conceived, which contradicts the dogma of the Christian faith.
All right, so you're saying there can only be one Immaculate Conception.
That's the dogma.
Right. There's only one ticket, and Mary got it.
Yep.
So Adam and Eve could not have been born, could not have been conceived
sinless.
Right. So it's a one seat show, and Mary got the ticket.
Yeah.
All right, that's a little clearer now.
So are you Catholic now? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. So okay. So your hang up is not the immaculate part; it's the conception part. You can't have both.
You can't have both.
It's
Yeah.
like you
Can't have
can't have
both.
both.
Can't have both. I don't see why God can't do whatever he wants to do. He could do whatever he wants to do. If he wants to take a bunch of apes and have them whatever. But there's another dogma, which is that God created a good world. And, there was like a paradise, Eden, and there was no sin. There was also no suffering. There was no death. So, there are a bunch of problems. It's not just the Immaculate Conception. It's the Immaculate Conception, though, that made me say, aha, okay, definitely 100% guaranteed I'm a young earth creationist now. Because up until that point, I was just sort of like agnostic about the whole young earth creationism thing.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're going to be biblically consistent, you should be young earth creationist.
Yes.
That's my view. Let me see. All right. Well, that's clearer to me now. I was really confused about that. Could talk more about Augustine, but I'll let that pass.
I love St. Augustine.
Yeah, I don't want to get. I could get. We could talk about
We can be done with him.
Pelagianism.
We're done with him.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay. Yeah. I guess in regards to evolution, you said that evolution goes against the metaphysical principles of the scientific method.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if you could talk more about that, because some of the metaphysical principles in science are things like the principle of causality, the principle of uniformity of nature, principle of substance, things like that. Those are metaphysical principles that guide the scientific method.
Yeah, just so you know, there is that uniformitarian thing is not Catholic. The Catholic view of creation is that there's a distinction between the time of creation and the time of providence. Okay, so we have creation, and then there's 6 days of creation, and the seventh day is the day of rest, and then we have providence. So it flies in the face of the uniformitarianism of the naturalist, materialist, atheist of today. So that's one of the big obstacles to understanding the debate between, for example, a theistic evolutionist and a young earth creationist who is a Christian. Like, as the theistic evolutionist might be a Christian and might be a devout, pious Christian, just hasn't understood that there's that distinction between creation and providence eras.
Okay.
These are distinct.
But how do you feel that evolution as a theory violates some of the metaphysical principles of the scientific method?
Well, my number one principle that's violated, the one I like to focus on, is the principle of proportionate causality. You can't give what you don't have, and the cause is more perfect than the effect, always. Okay, so that's clearly violated by evolution, where you start out with a molecule, you end up with a man, right? You start out with whatever, like, you name it. Start with an ape and go to a man. It's violating the principle of proportionate causality. It doesn't matter where you start. If you're going from one kind to another kind, you've definitely violated the principle of proportionate causality, 100%. Because guess what? I'm more perfect than an ape. Speaking for myself personally, I'm more perfect than an ape. I have free will and reason. So I would say infinitely more perfect than an ape. Any ape. Even the one they train to do dancing and painting and speak a few words or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's subjective. I mean, there's other animals that have, greater abilities than humans have. Obviously humans
bacteria are better at being bacteria, doing bacteria things, but I'm infinitely superior to a bacteria because I have free will and reason. I'm made in the image and likeness of God. So you have to remember that I'm going to always be arguing from a Christian perspective. I'm not going to be, going to some atheistic mindset and saying, yeah, it's better to be a human than to be a worm. No, the atheist can't do that. And the atheist evolutionists don't do that. Aaron Ra does not do that. Aaron Ra will not say that a human is objectively, absolutely, eternally, immutably superior to a worm. He will not say that. I've tried. I've tried to get him to say that. He won't say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're all different species. Some have certain abilities over others. Bats have echolocation. We don't. Cheetahs can run faster than humans, but obviously, we can invent machines that go faster than cheetahs. We're the top of the food chain, but again, each species have their unique abilities, and natural selection will only select for what survives. So what can benefit us now could be a detriment to us later if the environment changes. If we're not able to adapt to the environment, we could go extinct. Which, according to evolution, over 99% of all species are extinct.
I like to ask evolutionists, if you don't mind if I interrupt. I find the whole topic a little bit boring, but I'd like to ask you about the future of the evolution of humans. I interviewed a couple of transhumanists. About the transhumanist movement?
I'm not too familiar with that.
Okay,
no.
Well, they believe evolution. They believe in evolution, and they like it. And they say, hey, guess what? We've evolved to such an extent that we are sort of able to comprehend this process that we're a part of. And hey, why don't we harness that knowledge we have about the process by which we became so wise, right? Homo sapiens sapiens, right? We became wise. So let's harness that process, tweak it, and let's build the Ubermensch. This is what Nietzsche's project was all about too, right? So you've got, out of this, we have Planned Parenthood, we've got the eugenics movement, we've got all kinds of satanic stuff that's just totally anti-life from my Catholic perspective. But from their perspective, this is wonderful. This is the future. We're going to have humans living forever, and they're going to have their minds in a computer hardware that will be updated and maintained. And they envision all kinds of things for the future of humanity that's better. It's humanity 2.0 and these sorts of things. And if you believe it or not, the morons that are running this sick planet believe this stuff in, the World Economic Forum, and Klaus Schwab talks about it in his book, The Great Reset, stuff like that. It's a real thing. Like these godless baby killers, they really believe in this stuff and they're excited about it. And, the Methuselah Project, I'm sure you've heard about these projects. Like these are mm-hmm. supposedly intelligent, overly educated, predominantly men, but some women in there too, white men and white women. But anyway, it's a sick thing. But I like to discuss it with anyone that believes in evolution because, why not get excited about the future of humanity? Why not look forward to the Ubermensch, the Overman, that omega point off in the future where we're bigger, better, stronger, we live longer, and we don't need food, we don't need this, we don't need that. We don't need mother and father, we don't need the nuclear family, we don't need any of this stuff. We've just evolved past that. What does it fill you with dread as it does me, or does it fill you with excitement, or you just find the whole thing ridiculous, or what?
Well, I think what evolution teaches is evolution doesn't say that we're going to perfection. Evolution doesn't care about our.
I know we can harness evolution and go toward perfection. That's what they say.
Yeah, well, if we come to a point where our personalities are in a computer, can we say we're humans at that point? I think what evolution really teaches that eventually all species, including the human species, will eventually go extinct. We'll either go extinct or we will evolve into a different species. will be Homo something else.
It's funny. It's funny because the theistic evolutionists reject that. They say, "Oh, no, no, no. We've reached the apogee. We've reached the high water mark, and this is what God intended. We're human, and we're stuck at this level of evolution, and that's as far as it's going to go." And I'm like, why? Why? Why do you say that? What makes you say that? What reason do you have to say that as a theistic evolutionist? Why? Because Jesus had this form? Because Jesus was limited in this way? Is that why? Or what is it? So it's a very interesting question to ask the atheist, but it's even more interesting to ask the Christian who believes in theistic evolution. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think theistic evolution. Well, I think Christian theistic evolution has a lot of problems, particularly biblically. I mean, you mentioned one already. I don't think the Adam and Eve story, how sin entered in the world and so forth, is compatible with theistic evolution at all. Again, I think to be more consistent, you need to be a young Earth creationist. But yeah, I think with evolution, I think the environment will definitely change, and humans will either change with it or they'll die out. They say we're going to be out of fossil fuels in 50 years. Things will be could be quite different then. There could be another, ice age. Who knows? If we don't adapt to the changing environment, then we'll die out. But we'll have to evolve. Whatever advantages we had to be able to survive in that environment will direct us. Will direct our genes going forward from there. So, but yeah, I think evolution teaches that eventually Homo sapiens will go extinct. We'll either go completely extinct or we'll evolve into something else.
What do you think about the heat death that's coming according to the mainstream physicists?
Well, I think that's one theory. They're saying there's enough dark matter. And dark matter is just a placeholder for something we can't explain. But there might be enough dark matter where the universe kind of goes back on itself, and perhaps it's like
but it's still heat death though. It's still heat death. It's still a heat death because guess what happens when all that matter energy gets compressed? Temperature rises, right?
And then perhaps there'll be another Big Bang, and that's an endless cycle, so forth.
Yeah, that's what Nietzsche believed.
Yeah,
the eternal recurrence. This is the Stoic idea, right? That great fire, conflagration, and so much for the meaning of your life. But you said it's just a subjective, passing existential thing. Like I'm here now, I got my meaning now, I got my value now, whatever. But what do you think about the three laws of thermodynamics? Do you think that they're pretty well established, like they're laws? Because they're called the laws of thermodynamics, right? Because they're supposed to be inviolable for closed systems, and the universe is necessarily a closed system.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, with quantum mechanics, it seems quite open at this point. The first law of thermodynamics that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just transforms from one form into another and so forth. I mean, that's what science runs on and so forth. But quantum mechanics is making us see the laws of physics in a totally different way. And they say Einstein's theory of relativity doesn't hold up. In regards to the Big Bang and in quantum mechanics, it's not compatible with it and so forth. So, scientific theories are models, or predictive models. You can get into whether or not you're a scientific anti-realist or not, but they're certainly useful. Science has produced wonderful things in fields of medicine, agriculture, technology, and so forth. It's very useful, and that's where maybe a pragmatic theory of truth might have some viability there. But I still hold to a correspondence theory of truth. But yeah, no, I don't think again, and science teaches that we can't be dogmatic. All scientific theories are provisional and open to revision, and they're not considered absolute truth. They're just considered, effective, reliable models that we can make predictions with, and but something new can come along which will change that. One example is Newton's theory of gravity. Einstein showed that there's problems with it, and there are problems with it, like the orbit of Mercury, for example. There's problems with Newton's theory of gravity doesn't fit well with the orbit of Mercury, but it's still used because it's a simpler theory. They didn't just throw out Newton's theory. It's still in use. It still has uses. It's just there's just exceptions to the rule, and now there's exceptions to the rule with Einstein's theories as well. So it's perhaps we can call it progressive revelation. So
yeah, it's a lot of room for the atheist and the agnostic to hide in all the fancy complexities of the quantum world and relativity and the side. I am mocking a little bit, but I love that. When I was an agnostic and then an atheist, I loved that. I loved it's sort of funny to use this word, but the mystery of it, it's just like, it's wonderful, it's awesome. And you hear a lot of atheists or agnostics that are into the natural sciences that have that reverence, that awe, like it's almost like a religious experience, and more power to them. I think that's great, right? But we need to also understand we have reason, we're able to reason clearly. 1 + 1 is 2. I've met physicists who deny that 1 + 1 is objectively, eternally, immutably 2. And they're serious. And I asked them, what do you do when the cashier gives you the wrong change? Because it's like, it's an objective, eternal fact that 1 + 1 = 2. And you can prove it, and you know it intuitively. And when you get shortchanged, you're angry, and you appeal to a standard which is unmoving. That is God. You're bowing to God at that point. You're going back to that cashier, and you're like, you shortchanged me. I just talked to a guy. I just talked to an atheist. Had this experience. He gave a 50. He got changed for a 20. He was angry. He had a righteous anger, and he was glorifying God in that moment because he knows 1 + 1 is 2. He knows it. But the physicists today, they deny 1 + 1 is 2. Objectively and eternally and absolutely. They deny that the principle of causality is universally valid. They deny the principle of sufficient reason. They deny everything and anything. Why? Not because it makes sense, but because they don't want to confront their own sinfulness. They don't want to submit to God Almighty. They don't want to repent. They don't want to change their ways. So I'm sorry to go into this emotional rant here, but that's what it's all about. I mean, I see through it. I've been on both sides of the question. I know myself. I told you earlier, I love sinning. It's fun. It's easy. Okay? I love it. But I can't deny the truth. I discovered the truth by the grace of God, and I have to change. I have to change my ways. No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm better than you, but I'm striving to be better than you. I'm striving. So we'll wrap it up there because I do have to go to bed. I got to get up and work in the morning, but I really appreciate meeting you. You're a sweet, nice guy. I respect your worldview for the most part, and I'd like to have you back and chat some more. It's a real pleasure, and you drew a big audience by my standard. You got a bunch of people in the live chat here. I love you all. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, and so that's it. We'll wrap it up here. What would you like to leave us with in terms of a positive, hopeful message for anyone that's listening? Because, we've got in the live chat, we've got a lot of atheists, but a couple of Catholics and Protestants too. So what would you say, just as a general message that everyone can walk away feeling good?
Well, I think we were able to clear some things up. I had a lot of questions, and I think you were able to answer them. And I'm hoping our conversation will generate more dialogue, more conversation. So I think we can walk. I think that'll be a positive thing that comes from our talk. It's more positive and effective dialogue.
Amen, my brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And please keep in touch. Reach out anytime. You know how to book a slot on the live stream. It's easy. You just go to that app and you just pick a time. And so we'll definitely have you back. We'll see you again, and take good care of yourself. And we'll dig a lot deeper into all kinds of other stuff, as you wish. Okay, so keep in touch, and God bless you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
We'll talk soon. Bye.
Great. Bye now.